Hey, you want to take a little dive into seeing what the squad is coming up with? They are demanding 14 trillion large in federal reparations for descendants of slaves. Radical Dems say huge bill will be paid by reducing defense spending, and trauma lives in the black body. Let's 14 trillion. What is our federal budget? Is that like 31 trillion? So we're going to double down and take basically half of that and just add it on there. And we're going to cut back on defense spending and make the country weaker. And, yeah, let's get into it. Here we go. So a number of House Democrats, led by Representative Cori Bush, who is out of her mind and doesn't really understand reality, introduced a resolution Thursday to reignite a push for federal reparations that would amount to over half of the United States gross domestic product. The GDP, over half. Half. They want to just pay us. Yeah, just pay us. It'll all be good. And then we're going to fund it from, taken from the rich and taken from the defense budget, and just throw it out there and all will be good. The resolution states that the U.S. has a legal and moral obligation to provide reparations for the enslavement of black people and calls for $14 trillion to be paid, at least the amount of the black-white wealth gap, Bush told DailyMail.com during a press conference. The entire United States GDP was $25 trillion in 2022. The U.S. is already $31.4 trillion in debt, and lawmakers are currently engaged in tedious negotiations over where to cut the budget so that they can raise the debt limit. So you gotta cut that. You gotta agree on it. So when they can agree on raising the debt limit, if they can't, then we have that government shutdown thing, and it's not good for anybody. And those government workers, they'd get furloughed and then they come back, and it's just this craziness. But, we've got this massive amount of debt out there already. Our grandchildren's children's children. I was reading a book yesterday by Brian Johnson of AC/DC. I can't tell you their name, but their initials are AC/DC. And at the preface, he was saying, to my great-great-great-great-grandchildren, I will never meet you, but here's my story. I thought that was pretty cool. But in this case, it's not cool because his great-great-great-great-grandchildren are going to be paying off this debt or be suffering the results of defaulting on said debt in a global economy. That's not going to be good. So either which way, things are a wee bit hosed, should we say. The 14 trillion figure is in line with the findings of Duke University professor and economist William Sandy Darity, who estimates the wealth gap is in excess of $300,000 per person. And there are roughly 40 million black people whose ancestors were enslaved in the U.S. Asked about the funding source of such a program, Bush suggested the nation reduce its spending abroad and on defense. Hey, I am all for reducing spending on, the war in Ukraine. What about that? Why are we even battling there? Well, there's a bunch of geopolitical reasons, right? Or so we're told. Okay. All right. I mean, there's skin in the game there somewhere, but So we're just going to reduce our spending. You know what? If it's 14 trillion we're looking for, and we're looking to, maybe get some traction on this bad boy 4 or 8 trillion dollar existing amount of debt we've got. Why didn't I think of just cutting down a little defense spending? Weird, right? So Bush suggested the nation reduce its spending abroad and on defense. What a moron. This lady is just a complete idiot. It's just so terrible. So terrible. We're working with this administration. We're talking with other members of Congress, but I'll say this, she said, if we can continue to fund these endless wars, or we can continue to put trillions of dollars into these forever wars, into the defense budget, even beyond what they asked for, if we can send money abroad to help elsewhere, then we have to make sure, because we're talking about things that are happening now. What? What do you mean? Work with me here. I want to understand. Oh, maybe it's not logical. Oh, that's it. The Pentagon has requested a budget of $824 billion for fiscal year 2024. Last I checked, that's still under $1 trillion. And then we're asking for 14 times that for reparations. Down in California, in San Francisco, they've come up with however many billion. And, it just so far outstrips their budget, which is already $750 million upside down. They're negative $750 million, something like that. Every governmental entity budget is going to go sideways in the next few years. It already is, but the impact of it hasn't come through and been felt. Because you've got, you had that whole money coming through from the pandemic, Fed money coming through. And then recently we've had a little thing called a recession that nobody wants to admit that we're in. Call it what you want, a soft landing. Okay. Yeah, whatever. Well, all the numbers are down. Taxes collected are down. Excise tax on real estate is way down. Real estate has been annihilated. I talk every day about, I talk to my brokers. Yeah, I had to go get another job. I'm like, yeah, I know you haven't done much the last 8 months. Real estate got decimated as of June of 2022. That's about the starting point when the Fed started to bump those rates up. And they did such an amazing job that it just basically killed the real estate industry. Now, the real estate industry was too hot to trot for too long, and it needed a slowdown. But the Fed came to the game late, in my opinion, with their interest rates and trying to do what they can to slow things down. And so now it's probably having more impact than if they, negatively than if they would have just done a slow little raise. But instead we were told that the inflation was transitory and, it'd be gone by tomorrow. So there's that, right? So you've got a whole bunch of stuff. You've got commercial real estate values, in my opinion, because you've got less folks working in buildings, less folks working in downtown. That's the major piece that I think economically, that's the major piece that I'm following right now. Because without all the people in downtown, working in downtown, those buildings don't have the ability to cover mortgage payments, especially if they've been recently purchased. Just no go. Don't have enough income coming in. You can't make those payments. What do? You default. So, and then in order for somebody else to be enticed to buy those buildings, they're going to have a discount, right? Because rents are way down because there's nobody there. I was reading a story about traffic in Seattle this morning, right before I came on my own recorded podcast. And it was saying that it is very noticeable. The traffic here in Seattle is horrific on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And I will buy that all day long for $1. That is 100% true. I am commuting into Seattle all the time, not because I work there, because it's stuff. Like yesterday, I went over and met one of my brokers over there and had lunch with him over in Ballard. God, there's a lot of tents in Ballard. And it's just even driving around the business district. It's just, it's not good. It's not good. Seattle's got a bunch of just craziness going on. Biden on the campaign trail said that he supported a study of the idea of reparations, not of reparations, but yeah, I will back up taking a little look-see. Now, one of my thoughts is always, okay, what about the Native American Indians? I mean, I'm just throwing them out there. I mean, so we gave them casinos. Is that what they get? I mean, is that, in a nutshell, is that what they get? I mean, they get to sell free, booze with no federal tax on it or state tax, They get to sell cigarettes without all the taxation in there. It's a deal. So, hey, come to the reservation. Okay. All right. How about Chinese Americans who came here from China and built the effing railroad? On the backs of you want to talk about just basic enslavement because they didn't have much. What else were they going to do? You want to talk about some forced enslavement? There's a whole bunch of other people, and people throughout history have taken advantage of one another. It's throughout history, right? I'm not saying that as a justification, but to put a price tag on it and in an environment where numbers are negative, to just say, hey, you know what? Why don't we just cut down the defense budget a little bit and, squeeze a quick 14 trillion out of there? To me, this whole idea of reparations, if there is zero ability to fund them, Because what are you going to do? You're going to float some kind of debt structure to do that? You're going to float a bond? I mean, that's what you'd be forced to do if you've got a negative budget already, because that money's got to come from somewhere. And that's where these politicians that don't have a business background, just take it out of the defense budget. It'll be fine. I'm sure that'll work out. China and Russia are going, oh, okay. Heard you got some reparations coming. Good luck with that. So it was founded at the expense of the lives, freedom, and well-being of Black people, American folks who they stole, whose enslavement, exploitation, and dehumanization were written into the Constitution. What I'm saying is, hey, you can't afford it, and you're throwing these enormous numbers out there. Whether or not that's true, whether or not some type of reparations should be paid, there's a ton of other folks out there that probably should have reparations along the same line. But this is kind of what's always gone on throughout mankind. We just taken advantage of different groups of people, made it happen. I mean, it's not like folks have gotten along the whole time, right? No, there's always somebody marauding another country doing something crazy, right? The truth is, slavery and discrimination are not a minor or insignificant part of our country's development. They are integral. Yes, they are. But are reparations in the form of $14 trillion? It's such a huge number that it's just so pie in the sky that it's not attainable. It's not realistic. So why even throw it out? I think you are getting folks' hopes up. You're getting folks' hopes up over something that is not legally, fiscally permissible. Can't do it. Why? Because the money isn't there. We're already 31 trillion down. So when the president says, well, I'll look at an idea to study it, that's his nice way of saying it's never going to happen. And these reparations, these are not ever going to happen, at least not at the 14 trillion level, not even at the level of 1.2 million, I think it was, per person, up to a max of 1.2 million down in California, down in San Francisco, in a state where, since their inception, they have not been a slave state. But they want to pay out reparations from an already bankrupted state budget. Okay. Well, all right. Well, and by bankrupted, I mean wildly upside down, negative. They do not have a positive surplus. Have had in the past very recently. That's because you've got so much federal money floating through, right? Yeah, so here's that California. So the California Task Force was created to study the economic effects of slavery and discrimination in the state back in September 2020, making California the first state to embark on studying the possibility of reparations for Black Americans, even though slavery was banned in California even before it joined the Union. The group formally approved its final recommendations. This is just kind of a think group to the California legislature last weekend, some of which have been seen as controversial. The suggestions include payments of a minimum. This is the California one, right? Payments of a minimum of $360,000 for Black Californians, so the payment may go up to $1.2 million. And where's that money going to come from? Another recommendation that would give the control of local land use decisions to a state agency that would approve plans based on whether they maintain or decrease segregation. Based on what? What metric would you possibly use there that would make any sense at all? That is a terrible idea right there. Around 3 in 10 U.S. adults say descendants of slaves should be repaid in some way. Okay? All right. On its surface, let's go with that. 3 in 10. In some way. Not $14 trillion. Not 1.2 million per person. Because that's just basically going to absolutely bankrupt the state of California. And 14 trillion, you add another 14 trillion onto our budget right now, I'll give you a hint. It doesn't go in the right direction, the budgetary process. When you already have less money than, what is required to run things, and you're forced to raise that debt ceiling yet again, and you're asking to pile another 14 trillion in debt on there, that to me is just, it's not even worth discussing, except for me, because, that's what I do. I podcast and talk about this ridiculous stuff. But 14 trillion, Who in the world is going to say, you know what? That is a great idea. Why didn't I think of it sooner? Just go ahead and take it out of the Department of Defense budget, which isn't even $1 trillion, but we need 14 of those bad boys. How is this going to work? Who's going to vote for this? Nobody. Right? This is just, it's just some absolutely mind-blowing stuff that we're even having this discussion, right? That we're even having this discussion. I think what this does is this emphasizes the lack of, hands-on reality that these folks have, because they're not approaching it from, a business standpoint like I would. They're just kind of pie in the sky. This is what we should get. Well, maybe, I'll throw a maybe out there. All right. Never say never. It's like Jim Carrey and Dumb and Dumber. And, the gal says, if you were the very last man of mankind, whatever, talking about him going out on a date with her. And it comes down to her saying, just basically, you have zero shot. You're one out of a million guys left. I still wouldn't date you. And Jim Carrey goes, so what you're saying is maybe, something like that. I'm saying, okay, let's throw it out there. Let's just say maybe. But there's just no way you're going to make this happen. It's not. I mean, there's no money for the budget. Plus, folks won't put it in place. So why even talk about it? Why even talk about it? Why even get people's hopes up? Hey, I'm going to get $1.2 million. No, you're not. Where's that money going to come from? I think most people are reasonable enough to understand that. But then you've got these politicians that base, their entire careers off of having these ideas, when their ideas in reality don't match any semblance of making it happen. 14 trillion? Good luck with that one. I mean, not even a hedge fund manager can, make that fly. Hey, spin this. How? It's kind of what I would think. So around 3 and 10 say, all right, should be repaid in some way. Just not probably $14 trillion total, right? Because it's just so ridiculous. What's ridiculous is that we're even having this conversation, because it's so unfounded in reality. It's just, it's a no-go. It's like, no, that's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So there we go. So why do we even talk about this? Well, because it kind of shows how far outside of reality some of these entities are within our political system. They got stuff going on, but it's not stuff that can actually happen. And when the rubber hits the road, this just isn't. This is going down the road of nowhere, right? All right. But if something more comes up, I'll let you know all about it. So make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell, hit the like button, because we're covering this stuff all the time. And I'd love to have you be a part of it. So thanks again for subscribing if you have already. And thanks again for being a part of what we got going on here, which is news for reasonable people. You're reasonable. I'm reasonable. Let's go. Thanks again for being here. Bye for now.